I remember the way she laughed. It wasn't cruel at the time. At least, I didn't think so. It was the kind of laugh that bounced off the walls and filled rooms. It was why I fell for her in the first place. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party. Ironic, now that I think about it. She was tucked in a corner, wine in hand, rolling her eyes as everyone else swooned over matching napkin colors and personalized hashtags. "That'll never be me," she said, when I finally walked over and asked what she was smirking at. "Marriage?" I asked. "No, not marriage. The performance of it. The illusion." She raised her glass. "To authenticity." I should have known then. Her name was Lila. She was the kind of woman who could command a room without raising her voice. She had this restless energy, like she was always scanning the horizon for something better, something just out of reach. I found it intoxicating. She found me steady. That's the word she used. "You're steady," she said one night, curled up against me after a particularly brutal day at her law firm. "You make the chaos quiet." At the time, I took it as a compliment. Now, I wonder if it was just a convenient truth. We dated for almost 4 years. Long enough for both sets of parents to start dropping not-so-subtle hints. Long enough for our friends to start asking if we were next. Long enough for me to imagine a life with her. Shared bills, Sunday mornings, maybe a dog. I wasn't in a rush, but I was certain. Certain enough to put money aside for a ring. Certain enough to talk to her best friend about designs she might like. But Lila was always slippery when the topic of the future came up. Not evasive, just theoretical. She liked to say things like, "If I ever get married," or "if I don't end up in London." And I told myself it was just her personality, her way of keeping options open. I respected that. I wanted her to choose me freely, not feel boxed in. And for a while, I believed she would. Then came the conversation. We were at a rooftop bar downtown. Her choice. It was one of those warm spring evenings that makes the city feel alive again. She was in a black jumpsuit, hair swept back, laughing with her usual charm. We'd just toasted to her promotion, senior associate now, and she leaned in across the candlelight, suddenly serious. "Can I tell you something without you taking it the wrong way?" she asked. My stomach tensed. Nothing good ever follows that sentence. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice even. She hesitated, then smiled, softly, like she was about to share a secret, not deliver a blow. "I've always thought of you as my plan B." I blinked. "What?" She sipped her drink, eyes still on me, like this was a normal thing to say. "Don't take it the wrong way. I just mean, if life doesn't go how I expect, if I don't meet the right person, I know I could always build a life with you. A real one. Stable. Safe. Safe." There was that word again. I didn't respond at first. My brain was scrambling, replaying her voice in slow motion. Plan B. Like I was the fire extinguisher behind glass. In case of emergency, break heart. "You know that's not how I see you, right?" I finally managed. "I know," she said quickly, leaning forward to touch my hand. "I know you love me. And I love you too. Just maybe not in the way you want. Not yet." Yet. I smiled, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of smile you give when you realize the person across from you never saw you the way you saw them. Not really. You were always a placeholder. A backup plan. The conversation shifted after that. She didn't notice my silence. Or if she did, she chose not to acknowledge it. We paid the bill. She kissed me goodnight like nothing had changed. But something had. I went home that night and sat in the dark, the ring hidden in my sock drawer like a loaded gun. The next few weeks were a blur. I still showed up. Still texted good morning. Still smiled at the right moments. But something inside me had cracked, and once a crack appears, it only widens. She kept talking about her future, maybe a fellowship in Europe or transferring to the San Francisco office. Her tone was always breezy, like I'd just follow, like I'd be there waiting regardless of where she landed. That's when I met Rachel. She was a friend of a friend, a photographer with paint on her hands and honesty in her voice. Our first conversation was about regrets, oddly enough. We were sitting on a curb after a gallery showing, both slightly tipsy, and she said, "I wasted 2 years on someone who didn't know how to love me back. Now I don't let people halfway in." I didn't mean to fall for her. I really didn't. But Rachel saw me in a way Lila never did. Not as a fallback, but as a beginning. She asked questions that mattered. She remembered the little things. And when I told her I was still technically in a relationship, she nodded. "Do you love her?" "I thought I did," I said. But now I think she just loved the version of me that stayed quiet. Rachel didn't pressure me. She just said, figure it out. But don't be someone's safety net when you could be someone else's choice. That line stayed with me. It haunted me, honestly, because deep down, I already knew what I needed to do. But what happened next, what I chose to do, that wasn't just about me. It was about clarity and a little bit of justice. And it happened the night Lila invited me to her firm's summer gala, a swanky, overpriced affair at a vineyard just outside the city. She said, I'm glad you're still coming. You've always been there for me. And that was the final straw. Not, I love you. Not, I'm lucky to have you. Just there. Always there. Like furniture. So I made a call. Two, actually. One to Rachel, and one to a jeweler. Because sometimes the best way to stop being someone's plan B is to show them you were never waiting around in the first place. The vineyard was the kind of place designed for people who say things like, let's circle back, in their sleep. Rows of neatly aligned grapevines stretched toward a sunset you'd swear was curated. String lights crisscrossed the courtyard, and every champagne flute was etched with the firm's name. Lila looked beautiful. I won't pretend she didn't. That's never been the issue. She wore this sleek, emerald green dress that made heads turn the second we arrived. She looked like success, like confidence, like the future she always dreamed of. And me? I wore a charcoal suit and a quiet smile. The kind that comes from knowing something no one else does. Rachel wasn't with me. Not yet. Lila introduced me to partners, to interns, to women in navy dresses and men with perfect haircuts. She called me her boyfriend a few times, but the words sounded more like habit than pride. This is Alex, she'd say, then pivot into a story about her promotion or the time she out-negotiated a client. No one asked me a single question. I wasn't surprised. At one point, her colleague, a guy named Trent, clapped me on the back and said, man, Lila's lucky. Most guys wouldn't stick around without a ring on the finger after this long. He laughed. I didn't. Lila didn't either. She just smiled and sipped her drink. Later, I caught her near the catering table, chatting with her mentor. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I wasn't trying not to either. She's still with that guy? The woman asked, nodding toward me. Lila shrugged. Yeah, he's reliable. The mentor laughed. That's a good fallback. I know, Lila said. He's like Plan B, but emotionally available. They both laughed. Like it was clever. Like it was fine. That was when I texted Rachel. You ready? She sent a single word. Always. Now, to understand what came next, you need to know something about Rachel. She doesn't enter a room. She arrives. She steps into a space like she belongs there, and somehow, everyone else adjusts around her. She wore a soft gold dress, hair loosely pinned, a quiet kind of elegance. But the real statement wasn't what she wore. It was the box in her hand. Lila saw her before I said anything. Her eyes narrowed as Rachel walked across the courtyard, completely unfazed by the heads turning to watch her. Who? Lila started. That's Rachel, I said simply. Rachel stopped in front of us, smiled at me, then handed me the small velvet box. I took it slowly, watching Lila out of the corner of my eye. She didn't understand. Not yet. I stepped back, took a breath, and dropped to one knee. Not in front of Rachel. Not in front of Lila either. But between them. And for a moment, everything froze. Conversations halted. The band even faltered in their rhythm. I looked up at Rachel. Her eyes didn't flinch. Rachel, I said, voice steady. I know this is sudden, but in the short time I've known you, you've shown me more honesty, kindness, and courage than I ever thought I deserved. And I don't want to be anyone's backup plan. I want to be chosen. Every day, and I want to choose you. Then I opened the box. The ring wasn't extravagant, but it didn't need to be. It was intentional. Like Rachel, Lila's face didn't move. At first. Then Rachel knelt too, not out of drama, but out of something quiet. Real. I choose you too, she whispered. The applause started hesitantly, then built like wildfire. Cameras flashed. Lila didn't clap. She just stood there, silent. Her wine glass tilted slightly in her hand, the liquid swirling like it was nervous. You're proposing to her? She asked finally, like she still couldn't process it. I stood, nodded. Yes, I am. In front of me? Yes, I said again. In front of the woman who called me Plan B, who thought I'd just keep waiting. The silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Rachel stood beside me, her arms slipping around mine, and Lila just stared. Her mask didn't fall all at once. It cracked in tiny, visible fractures. But we've been together for years, she said, voice low. And in all those years, I said gently, I don't think you ever really saw me. Not as a partner. Not as a choice. She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. People were watching, but I didn't care. This wasn't a performance. It was a decision. Rachel took my hand. And just like that, the night shifted. I didn't feel cruel. I didn't feel smug. I just felt free. We didn't stay long after the proposal. Rachel and I left the vineyard with the sound of murmurs behind us. Half gossip, half awe. I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't need to. That part of my life, that version of myself, the one who waited, who hoped. He'd already stayed too long at the party. The car ride back into the city was quiet. Not awkward, just full. Rachel rested her head against the window, her fingers wrapped around mine, like she knew I was still unspooling everything in my head. I didn't say much. Neither did she. That's one of the things I admire most about her. She knows when silence isn't absence, but presence. Later that night, I got a text from Lila. Just one line. You humiliated me. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have responded with anger. With the truth she never wanted to hear. That she humiliated herself the moment she opened her mouth and casually labeled me her contingency plan. That I didn't propose to get revenge. I proposed because standing next to Rachel, I saw what it felt like to be chosen. Not tolerated. Not used. Chosen. But I didn't say any of that. I just typed. You never saw me. That's what hurt. Not tonight. And I left it at that. She didn't reply. A few days passed. Word spread. Her colleagues at the firm were whispering, of course. Lila was sharp, yes, but reputations like hers live and die by perception. And in a world where power is often mistaken for charm, that night at the vineyard unraveled the illusion. I don't know if she tried to spin it. Probably. She was always good at controlling the narrative. But the thing about truth is, once it escapes, it echoes. I heard from a friend of a friend that she took some time off work. That she told people it was just burnout. Maybe it was. I don't take joy in that. I really don't. I meant it when I said I loved her once. I also meant it when I realized she didn't love me the same way. As for Rachel and me, we didn't rush into anything. The engagement wasn't about showboating. It was about clarity. And clarity deserves time. We went for long walks, had even longer talks. Talked about fears, about dreams. She told me she was afraid I'd regret making a decision so public, so fast. I told her I didn't. Because in a way, that moment, down on one knee, wasn't just a proposal to her. It was a vow to myself. To stop living in half-truths. To stop accepting scraps and calling it love. We ended up holding off on the wedding. Not indefinitely, just mindfully. We're not proving anything to anyone, she said once, curled up next to me with her head on my chest. We don't need to race. We just need to be real. And so we are. 1 year later, we're in a small apartment with sunlit windows and too many coffee mugs. We fight sometimes. We talk always. We laugh more than I ever thought possible. And sometimes, I still hear that word, Plan B, echoing faintly in the back of my mind. But now it doesn't sting. Now, it reminds me of the man I used to be. The one who waited. The one who mistook being needed for being loved. That man's gone. In his place is someone who knows what he's worth. Who doesn't wait to be picked. Who proposes when he's ready. Not to prove a point, but because he means it. And if you're wondering what happened to the ring I once bought for Lila, the one I kept hidden in the sock drawer, I sold it. Used the money for a camera Rachel had been eyeing for months. The first photo she took with it is still framed in our hallway. It's not of a sunset, or a city skyline, or even us. It's just a pair of footprints, side by side, in wet sand. Not one leading, not one following. Just together. Always forward.